faith, family, business, adventure. This is the Phoenix Podcast with Ken Sharpe.
Good evening and welcome to the Phoenix Podcast with truly yours, Ken Sharpe. Tonight we are graced and privileged to have a guest on our show that I'm really excited to talk to, Dr. Divine Ndhlukula, the founder, managing director and owner of Securico, and let me get this right, Comborero?
Correct.
Zikomborero Farms.
Correct.
Thank you for joining us tonight, Divine.
Thank you very much, Ken, and good evening, everyone.
So, a little bit of background. You're a holder of 2 MBA degrees from Midland State University and Women's University in Africa, as well as a PhD in philosophy and business leadership from the Women's University in Africa. You're an inspirational story to many of an ordinary woman who's achieved extraordinary achievements against all odds when you founded Securico in your kitchen with 3 employees. And now over 4,000, it says 200, but I heard 4,600 or 4,800 team members, you call them. A champion of women empowerment. You're credited with really transforming the industry that you're in and setting international standards. Having written recently a book, I can't wait to hear your story. Tell us, Divine, where did all this start? Take us to the beginning.
Oh, thank you very much, Ken. Where did it start? I guess it always starts from where you come from. The values that we grow up is old as I am, started from my background, my parents. Well, I come from a family of business people, for a start, but it doesn't necessarily follow that everyone turns out to be, there were 8 in our family, but trust me, not all of us are business people. But certainly the culture of working hard, the culture of understanding that for you to be somewhere, you need to have clarity of mind, you need to know exactly what you want. That I got from my parents. The culture of ensuring that you go out there with your best foot forward and then expect only to reap when you have sown. That is something that was inculcated in us by our parents. So that's the beginning of it.
Where were you born?
I was born in a rural area called Gutu, somewhere there in Mashingo. I grew up there. I went to school at schools there where we would walk a good 6-7 kilometers to school.
Every day?
Every day and back.
6-7 to school and 6-7 back?
Back, yes.
From the age of how old?
Well, we start school at the age of 6-7. So, right. So I then went to boarding schools when I went into grade 7. Then in high school I was in boarding schools. But certainly the greater part of my life has been a rural Gutu, where I was born, where I was brought up, where I learned everything about being a person.
So take us back to those humble beginnings, that village life. Share with us how it was. What can you remember? The good and the bad.
Well, what I can remember clearly in terms of who I then wanted to become, I think you have read about my being a champion of women economic empowerment. That is a realization of things that I saw as I was growing up. The peers that I went to school with, particularly the girls that I went to school with, did not go further. Some of them dropped from school at about, when they were about 10, 11, 12, thereabouts, because then girls were, if the parents could not afford, girls were to take the back seat in terms of resources. So
the boys were given priority.
Boys were given priority. So I realized that, for me, I realized that that was a serious anomaly. And that is what made me grow up understanding that, no, this is something that I need to do and make amends at every possible opportunity that I can get to ensure that women get to be, like we were discussing just earlier on, that the world is changing because women are really coming into the economic space. And again, it's important that we know that it's the females, it's the women that look after the homes, it's the females that ensure that every child goes to school and children are fed. So you find that it is important that women get that opportunity. Hence, I'm very, very focused on that's my mission right now as I live. my community engagements are very much focused on women economic empowerment, and it was a realization of the things that I grew up seeing. Some of the girls were being married off at 13, 14 because their parents wanted lobola, and so on. It was a way of parents getting some kind of wealth. So for me, I saw these things that were just not gelling well with me, even at the time, even at that very early stage of my life. In my teenage years, I could see this was a very unfair way of dealing with a girl child.
How did that really make you feel?
Well, I felt very bad. I was in a position where my father, in fact, for me to be where I am today, it is my father, because he inculcated in me the can-do attitude. I used to be a straight-A student, and each time I came back home after the school term, I would bring the number 1 position. And you would always say, never ever forget that that number 1 position is yours, and it's yours for as long as you live. So he inculcated me. So he was way ahead of his time, because this is the 70s that I'm talking about,
Wow.
where other parents would say the girl should really just be ready for marriage, be married off when she's still young, because then men desired young girls for marriage. So, but my father was saying, you are going to be amounting to something. So it went into my head. And obviously, this is why I'm here today.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So he believed in you.
He believed in me. He believed in my
capability.
capability.
Potential in you.
Absolutely.
And he was willing to promote that and support it, despite the cultural norm.
Absolutely.
How did that affect him in the village, in the life, in the rural areas? Was he?
Well, he would openly talk about it to his peers, because, he was running a shop, he was running businesses. So at least he was somebody people could look up to. While obviously some parents would say, that is the way to go. They would have really desired for their girl children to go to school as well, but some of them could not afford. So obviously, as a person that was a kind of a community leader, being a business person, a lot could see sense in what he was doing. And with time, a lot of the parents obviously followed suit. And with time, right now, it's a given that every parent wants their girl child to go to school, despite that they might not have the resources.
So if you look at your siblings, your brothers and sisters, how were they treated? Similarly, were they given that feeling of empowerment?
Absolutely, we are all given that opportunity. That's given. If anything, the boys had an upper hand, because then inheritance was supposed to be for boys. I think you are aware of that. Inheritance always was supposed to be for boys. And the boys in our family obviously used to think, okay, we have arrived because our parents have got this and the other. But for us, they inculcated this work hard in everyone. The boys would work not so hard.
Took it easy.
Took it easy. But anyway, so much as it happened, our parents passed on, and unfortunately, the boys could not really, manage. That's what eventually happened. Could not manage what they thought was theirs for taking them ahead in their lives.
So let's go back to the village life and share with us, what are some of the happiest moments of your life, the fondest memories you have of being in the rural areas? What do you miss the most?
Well, I used to love going into the wild to pick wild fruits, and I still do it today. I farm, as you might be aware. So I always like going into the bush, picking wild fruits and eating. And I used to be kind of a leader. I always led people. Whether we are going to school, back from school and so on, I always decided which route are we taking, what are we going to be, which fruit tree are we going to be going to, and so on. So I enjoyed that, because I was leading, and I was just not leading the girls, the boys and girls that were in my community. I kind of, they all gravitated towards what I would decide, this is what we are doing today. So those are moments that I always remember, that I grew up just understanding that the leadership position it's just a given.
And looking back now at that life, if you were to change anything, what would it be in your hometown, in your village of Gutu? What kind of things would you be doing? And maybe you can share with us some of the things you are doing. But what would you say is the biggest change you'd like to see there?
I think the biggest change is I want every child in that community to have an opportunity to education. Every child in that community to have access, particularly to digital skills. Right now, they do not. What we have done is we have put up a library that learners in about, I think there are 7 schools, that's the catchment area for this library. They didn't have textbooks to read. And you find that in most examinations...
Can I just slow that down? You're saying that 7 schools didn't have any textbooks to read?
7 schools around the business center where my father had a shop, yes. There are 7 schools. So I call them the catchment area because those are the schools that we are supporting the learners in getting books from the library.
And this library you established gave them their textbooks?
Now we established in 2021, so now they can access curricular textbooks for them to be able to read something that they are going to see in an examination.
Incredible.
Before that, they used to fail big time because one class would share one textbook. So you find
one
that...
class, one textbook? Amongst
textbook.
30 students?
Absolutely, roughly 30 or so students, yes. Amazing. So you find that a lot of them were failing. I only noted that because every year I used to select 2 girls from grade 7 so that I can take them through into high school and pay their fees on a bursary. But 2018, 2019, 2020, thereabouts, I hardly could find anyone passing. They would be passing with units that they would say, these are our best students, 12 units, 13 units. I mean, you know, in a normal situation, that's not a pass.
Yeah.
But those would be their best students. And we tried to find, obviously, we went down to find what the root cause was. And it was a lack of reading textbooks. So that's how we then came up with this intervention. And we put this library in 2021. End of 2022, the results came with a different...
in just 1 year?
In just 1 year. Because they could now access the books. We specifically bought books that the schools recommended where they knew that the examinations would really be about. So 2022, we saw a huge difference. Last year, there was quite an improvement as well. So for me, that is really my aspiration to see, because this particular area I'm talking about, it is in what I can term the back of beyond, where it's very far from Gutu Center is like the small town.
Right.
But you go further down about 40 kilometers right into the deep of
we're talking
Gutu
of dirt roads.
Yes.
Very limited infrastructure.
Absolutely.
Does it have electricity?
Well, we had to put electricity at the library as well. So there is electricity. We put solar power for us to prep for these computers that we are talking about. So for me, it is really the game changer. If a community gets the necessary exposure in education, the possibilities are immense. And this is why we have got a payoff line saying possibilities are beyond Gutu, beyond Zimbabwe. We want them to aspire to know that they can be in World Bank one day.
Yes.
They can be in Geneva one day. But there they are. They are smart, but unfortunately, they were not getting the resources for them to go any further. So I'm very happy that things are happening for my community in that sense.
So from Gutu to Geneva, you've heard it, the possibilities are endless.
Yeah.
All the people need is a hand up.
Absolutely.
Do you think there's other schools in areas like this? There are many other places that this need is there?
I'm 100% sure that there are places. When you see what you read in some places, whether in social media, in the media, in mainstream media, you see that there are schools that are still very, very backward in terms of resources, even infrastructure itself. So you find that there's still a desperate need, particularly for the learner who is in the deep of the rural area, and you find that poverty then becomes a vicious circle in those communities, because no one is going anywhere beyond where they are.
So you mentioned digitalizing and giving access to technology to these students.
Yeah.
If I was to ask you, and leapfrogging is a good word to use in today's world for technology. If we were to leapfrog from the traditional formal curriculum education system that we're using now of teaching children, and to bring them straight into the digital world of computers, would you say that they still need the books if we're going to create this computer lab where they now are learning 21st century skills online?
Well, I think we still need books. They can. Definitely, we still need people to
hold
open
physically.
a book. Yes, because you cannot be on a screen 24/7. But you can read a book when you are in bed.
True.
Okay, you can read a book on your
device.
On your device.
But these are poor people. They don't have devices.
Yeah, you see,
right?
this is it. So certainly the books are still a necessity.
So you think in those locations, definitely they should have the traditional learning as well as the additional computer skills?
Yeah, we need both. We need.
And with computer skills, how do you see it working? So how many in this? It's going to be in the same library, the computer lab you're building?
Yeah, it's in the same library. We are hoping that if we can put 10 PCs for the learners
Right.
to exchange, because obviously we cannot get everyone coming through on 10 pieces. It will be an arrangement with the different schools to say who's coming, then they select, for the kids to come through and learn their digital skills on the computers every day. And then we possibly should be able to touch a good number of them. By the time they finish their O-level or their A-level, they are at least not very behind in terms of their urban counterparts with the digital skills. Yeah. And
connectivity? Are you going to ask Elon Musk for his device? I'm not sure if it's legal yet in Zimbabwe, but
well, yes, we'll need connectivity, But I think for me, the most important thing now is for them just to understand what a mouse is. They don't even know what a mouse is.
So basic skills.
Basic skills. And then obviously we want to have data for them to be able to now access the internet and be able to learn, beyond just the digital skills of understanding, how do I do a spreadsheet, how do I, make a presentation and so on. So absolutely, yes, we will need to have data. I don't know, from where, but certainly we will get it. Is
there internet connections through the internet, through the Ethernet or
well, I'm sure there are several ways of bringing in data. I think satellite or so on and so. I mean,
But is there cell phone reception there?
Yes, there is cell phone reception. Yes, there is.
All right, so let's move away from that for a minute and look back at where you left the village. Can you take us back to that period in your life? How old were you? What led to you leaving, and what then happened?
Well, I left the Gutu because I went to high school in St. Dominic's here in Shawasha. Then obviously I went to college here in Harare. That's obviously I had to leave the village at the time to come to where the action was. And I started working here in Harare. After college, I started working for Zimbabwe Broadcasting Corporation, ZBC. And then, of course, I joined Old Mutual. At some stage, I left Old Mutual and joined Intermarket. It was then called Southampton, which changed to Intermarket at some stage. But while I was working all the time, I was enterprising. I always had been enterprising all my life, even as I was in school, in college. I always would be looking at what are the opportunities, what can I sell to other people. When I was working, I would rush to factories, order clothes, and sell them to my work colleagues at ZBC, at Old Mutual, and other places where I would engage some of my friends to sell in their workplaces. So I never stopped thinking about being an entrepreneur. I mean, I was always an entrepreneur. And
so it was natural? It was natural for you? Was it a desire or was it a need? Was it something that you...
I guess it's always a combination.
Right.
For me, it was a combination. It was natural, but it was also a need because, when my father passed on, I was only 22. I literally became the head of the family because I had to look after my other siblings. So there was a great need for me to create a lot more income. And of course, I'd always wanted to be, I was very clear even from my teenage years that I was going to be running a business.
So from the age of 22, you became the breadwinner in the family.
Yeah.
You provided for the family.
Absolutely.
Amazing. So what was your first job and how did that lead to you then becoming, getting into the security sector?
Well, I started accounting. So my first job, it's at BC. I was an accounting officer. I also moved in the same position to Old Mutual. And after Old Mutual, I moved to Intermarket. Now not in accounting, but in marketing. And I worked for Intermarket for 16 years. And I started security when I was still working at Intermarket. At least the first 6 months of starting security, I was still working. But prior to that, I'd already started farming. I was fortunate that I bought a farm that belonged to my parents. I bought it from people that were almost auctioning it, because my brother, we had inherited the farm. They used the title deeds to get a loan from a bank, and
So unfortunate.
he struggled to pay that loan. So I had to clear that loan, and the title deeds had to come into my name.
So you basically bought the farm out of bankruptcy?
Yes, so I bought the farm out of, I brought it out of bankruptcy. So essentially, I owned a farm at that stage. I was still in my late 20s. I was 29, in fact, I was 29, 30, thereabouts. So I started farming, but I then...
When you bought it, did you buy it for emotional reasons, or did you buy it because you wanted it to be productive?
Well, there are two reasons there. I needed to save the farm, the family farm, from being auctioned. Yeah. And certainly, I'd always been a farmer at heart. I remember as I was working for Intermarket, we used to get loans to buy houses. And I applied for a loan to buy a plot because I wanted to grow vegetables to sell.
Okay.
And they said, we don't buy plots we buy homes for people. And I couldn't get that plot.
Can you imagine?
But anyway, when I got the farm, it was really part of what I'd always wanted to do.
So you went to work
I have
right
green
away?
fingers. Sorry?
You went to work right away on the farm?
I went to work right away on the farm.
And what did you do
to it?
to it?
Easy.
What did you do?
Well, I thought cropping was the way to go in farming, but I was wrong, because our area is really not a cropping area. It's a livestock area. So I lost money in my first 2 years, thinking cropping was the way to go. And then I learned the lesson. I paid my school fees. Then I went into livestock. So I'm a livestock farmer as well.
And how is it doing today? Where did you start? Let's take back to, let's say you were then, 31 when you started livestock?
Yes, I started when I was around 31 or so. So I'm happy with what I've achieved in the livestock business. I'm one of the biggest breeders of goats in Zimbabwe, Boer goats. I do cattle as well. I do stud breeding of 3 types of breeds of cattle. And we do also commercial breeding of other cattle that are for beef. But I'm happy with what we have achieved, because I can't tell you what the amount of livestock I have, but I've yet to even lease land from 5 neighboring farms. I lease land from 3 other farms around, just for me to get enough grazing space.
And how many did you start with when you were 31?
I started with 3.
With 3?
3.
Bulls or cows?
Well, obviously, you start with the cows with 1 bull there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And from those 3, they're now
a
huge amount.
Yeah, I've got over 1,000 head of cattle.
Over 1,000. Amazing.
Yeah.
What a story.
Yeah.
So coming back to the kitchen table, and you're working for marketing now at Intermarket. Where did this idea of security come from? What led you to open a security company?
Well, an entrepreneur always sees opportunities wherever they are. So I'd seen an opportunity in my going around in city buildings, in everywhere. I then would meet security operatives that were not that professional, you know. And then I traveled overseas, and I would see that security personnel were very professional. They were regarded highly. And I said, what is the problem here? It was the way they carried themselves. It was the way they then, were interfacing with the public. And in Zimbabwe, they were derided. I'm sure you know they were being called all sorts of names because people didn't believe security guarding was a career. And I said, this is something that I could change.
We're going to hold that thought, Divine. We're going to take a commercial break, but we'll be back. Something she thought she could change.
Faith, family, business, adventure. This is the Phoenix Podcast with Ken Sharpe. faith, family, business, adventure. This is the Phoenix Podcast with Ken Sharpe.
Welcome back, and we're hearing it from the lady herself, Dr. Divine, telling us about seeing a need, believing that people's mindsets could be changed, that a low-earning, demeaning job at the time as a simple security guard could become a full-time career, led her to start this business that she now has, which is an empire. So take us back to those moments again.
So I then realized that people were looking at this as a kind of a stopgap, a job, a stepping stone to the next thing that they would do in life. And I said, let me really change this mindset, because this can be professionalized. People can make good careers out of the security industry. So that's how I saw this opportunity, and I just started, researching in terms of what does it take. And I knew it was first and foremost changing the mindset for people to believe that as security guards, they are just as equally important as the person who is holding a camera there, or a person that is running a property company like yourself. So I would then I had to be talking to every group of the people that we recruited. Obviously, we started small, 3 people.
3 people.
Yes, 3 people. So it was easy. When you start, I always tell people, when you're starting a business, start small, because that's how you can build momentum. And a steam engine builds momentum when it starts slowly. But when it gathers the necessary momentum, it cannot stop. So with 3 people, with 10 people, with 15 people, I was very involved in ensuring that we inculcate the right mindset. We teach them about them respecting, having self-esteem, respecting what they do, loving what they do. And by so doing, the whole industry changed, because wherever we posted our people, everyone would wonder, where are these people from? They are so different. That's how we grew the business. It's always the value proposition. I always say it is about what you are offering the customer at the end of the day. And we are not the cheapest in town. We are the most expensive in terms of. But you know
even
what?
Today.
It's about the value proposition. So that then obviously, got us to where we are as Securico, because you see, any of officers anywhere and everywhere, we have a seamless integration. We work in the banks, we work in the mining sector. In the banks, they are better bankers than the bankers themselves, because we calculate that when they are in diplomatic missions, they are just as good as those diplomats. If they are at a French embassy, we teach them French. They can speak basic French. So we build that seamless integration. It is really that value proposition, and them believing in themselves, them being proud, and them being smart, providing them with those tools that make them feel, they are doing a great job.
I can see, as your father believed in you, you believe in them.
Absolutely.
So tell me the milestones. Go back to the dates as far as you can remember. When did you get to 100 guards? How did you go from 100 to 1,000? I'm sure that's a big difference.
Well, we started with the four first were there, and then slowly we moved. I can remember by 3 years, no, not even 3 years, in 2 years, we were roughly about 200. By the time we were 10 years, we were at 2,500.
10 years to 2,500.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah. By the time we were 15 years, we were now over 3,000 and so on.
Amazing. And how much time do you spend on that business? What is your role currently, and how do you manage things?
Well, I lead the vision. I lead the vision. I've got a team. I believe in processes. I'm a very process-driven person. So this is why we went for certifications like ISO, because it gives you processes to ensure that your business is got systems. So I don't necessarily have to be looking at anything and everything. There are systems. We work on a defined framework of a strategy that we come up with every year, and say what is and who is going to do this at what level and so on. And then there are obviously measurements that we do every so often, every month, every quarter, we then need to evaluate and say, okay, where are we? Who is not doing what? Who is not pulling their weight? Where do we need to support them? And so on. So I'm very process-driven. So I've got a team. So I spend, this is why I can also have time to do farming. This is why I can have time to do I do a lot of speaking engagements. I get invited to speak all over the world. And I have time to do that because the business has got systems that are in place.
So it's running itself.
More or less, you cannot say in Zimbabwe, you cannot really, you need to continue having some form of hands-on because you can easily lose money, you know that. So you need to have controls in place, and you need to be very aware of, it's still important to run a tight ship as it were, but if the systems are working, it's easier for you to run that tight ship.
So if you don't mind sharing with the audience, because there's a lot of young people that we're talking to today, what kind of team do you have around you? Is it a board of directors? Is it a C-suite? Do you have a board of governors? What kind of operational people do you have in place, and who reports to whom? Yeah,
this is why I said it is important to have a process-driven. Right from the beginning of me setting up Securico, I put a board of directors in place. In 2 years, we were already at the board. I remember approaching this particular gentleman. He was a CA running his own firm, audit firm, and he said to me, "What do you really want me to do with a small company like yours?"
Little did he know.
Well, he reluctantly agreed because the wife was a friend of mine.
Okay.
So that's the only reason why he agreed. So basically we've got a board of directors. As the CEO, I do report to a board of directors, and we never miss the quarterly meetings. We never miss to report on anything that is happening in the business, because I feel everyone is accountable. At every stage, anyone in this life is going to be accountable to somebody. So I'm accountable. Despite that, I'm the shareholder of the business. I'm 100% accountable. And it helps me. This is why the systems, because I'm not here forever, the systems will ensure that the business continues to be sustainable, even if I, as the visionary, is no longer there. So this is why I report to a board. And then, of course, I've got senior managers that report to me in the different portfolios, that they run the different portfolios of the business. And below them, they've got middle managers in the different portfolios and so on.
And are the people reporting to you called managers? What is their titles?
The people that report to me are called heads.
Heads.
A head of division.
Okay.
So we've got a head of electronics division, because we've got an electronics division that does alarms, CCTVs, and so on and so forth. Then we've got the head of HR and quality assurance. Then we've got the head of finance, who is the finance director. Then we've got the head of administration, responsible for procurement, for our large fleet of vehicles, for our properties, for anything administrative. Yeah.
So that's 5 people in the top management team.
Yeah, that report to me. Correct. And then we've got a head of operations.
Right.
That the guarding services
So that would be your C-suite, your top executive management team.
Correct. Yeah.
And how often do you meet with them?
Every month without fail. But every day there is we share information, either on we share information on every platform that we can get. Whether it's on WhatsApp, whether it's on what we call a situation report on email, and so on.
So you're in touch with them daily?
We're in touch
and you keep your finger on the ball, even though you've taken a step back and the business is running, you keep your finger on the ball?
Absolutely.
Who is the chairman? Do you have a chairman of the board or chair lady?
Yes, there is a chairperson. The chairman that I was talking about, who initially did not think it was worth his while.
Okay.
He had to retire. Yeah, no, he had to retire at some stage. So we've got a lady that is chairing the board, Gloria Jarawan, maybe you know her.
I haven't met her yet.
Yeah, so she's the person who's sharing the board. We then had to put young people on the board at some stage 3 years ago, because we are saying these are the people that will take the business forward. Even as the management team, we were grooming younger management team to take over from these senior managers at some stage.
Fantastic. We're going to talk about the young people in a moment, but I want to go back to the farm, to Rico Borero. What does it mean? And tell us about the goats. I have a particular audience that's really interested in the goats.
Rikomborero, first and foremost, means blessings.
Oh, wonderful.
Blessings. That's what Rikomborero means. So about the goats, well, I think the goats industry, just like the gutting services industry, because a number of my friends used to think it was a joke for me to go into the security industry because they would say, you want to do what? Guards. Why I wanted to do that? Now, when I started doing goats, I'd been farming. I've been farming for 33 years now, roughly. But commercial goats, I only started in 2016. Initially, I also thought there's not much scope in doing a commercial breeding of goats or goats production. That was my thinking because I'd been farming until about 2016, not doing goats. But then I started realizing that there was a demand by NGOs who wanted to support the rural communities with goats because the goats are the easiest to support because they tried everything and it was not working. They tried, I think, chickens. It was not working because you need a cold chain when they are ready and they are not ready in the market. All those things were you know, and the cattle obviously, it's only a few people who can afford to buy, you know, cattle. So obviously, they started to be a demand for the supply of goats, particularly the improved breeds like the Boer goats, the Kalahari Reds, and there was not much happening in Zimbabwe. In fact, there was hardly any breeding of Boer goats in Zimbabwe at the time. So I saw an opportunity there and I said, okay. Initially, in fact, I had a set of goats that my mother, I just bought a few goats and I said, my mother and your sister, you guys, I'm just putting these goats at the farm, they are yours. You can do whatever you want. So I remember I bought them when they were 14. And at some stage, they were about 80 something. At the time,
On their own. They
on
just
their own.
grew naturally.
Yeah, on their own. And then I started realizing, and then that's when I started hearing that there is this opportunity where a lot of NGOs were looking for breeding stock, where even supermarkets, they couldn't get enough goat meat in their supermarkets. So I saw there's serious scope in goat production. So I said to my mother and your sister, I'm buying those goats from you. Yes, I bought them, but I'm now wanting to do this on a commercial
Seriously.
level. So I bought those 80 goats from them. And then, of course, I then started bringing in the improved breeds, or rather the other breeds from South Africa to infuse those Boer goat jelly, yes, into the indigenous, and also do even a pure breeding of those Boer goats. So that's how we started. It is taking off quite seriously, you know, the goat industry, goat production industry in Zimbabwe, because right now we cannot even meet the demand of breeding stock of goats. Much as we have established a lot of breeding centers with other farmers, we cannot even meet the demand for breeding stock. We actually have got to continue even importing more because the breeding here is not adequate for what the market is in need of.
And is it correct that a good Boer goat is thousands of dollars?
Well, it is.
Breeding stock?
It is. I know one of at the national breed sale, which happens every year, you send only the best there of stud animals. One of my goats that year must have been 2018 thereabouts, or 2017, 2018. We sold it for $2,400.
Amazing, even back then.
Back then, yeah.
And nowadays, what are you paying for a Boer goat for let's say for meat
No, for meat, well, I mean, for meat is really per kg per meat. You can't. But if you are buying a Boer goat for breeding, particularly the bucks, the male breeders, it can be anything between $400 and $600.
$400 to $600.
Yeah.
And the meat? Per
the
kg?
meat. Obviously, the meat goat meat sells for $5-6 a kg. So it depends. If you are slaughtering a Boer goat, which I would not do at this stage because I can sell it as a breeding stock. I get a lot more money than selling as meat. But if you can slaughter a Boer goat and get a carcass of about 20, 30 or thereabouts kgs. Depends with the So for meat you don't get that much. Yeah. But I guess with time we will start slaughtering once we have a lot of breeding going on. When the numbers have increased to that level.
Do you know what the population's like?
Yes, the population of just generally goats in Zimbabwe. Yes. There is a population of up to last year, because I started an association for goat producers some few years ago, and we did obviously working with the Zimbabwe Headbook because they do the analysis, the statistics, and so on. At the time, last year, the population of goats was just over 4 million throughout the country.
So it's grown.
It has started growing now. Yes, because there are more breeders. There are more serious breeders, particularly on a commercial level. Because goats just used to be for people. The goat was actually perceived as a rural person, as a poor person's animal. This is why a lot of people never thought there was commercial
value
in it. So, you know, in the rural areas, they just tied them on a tree and let it graze around there. There wasn't any commercial approach to it. So we have worked on a program with one of the NGOs where we have now transformed. We did a program for the last 4 years. It ended in October last year. We went around in certain communities, 6 districts, and commercialized, the breeding of goats in communities. So we have transformed that thinking, and that transformation is now started bringing results because the numbers of goats are actually increasing. They had numbers. I'm sure if we get the statistics for 2023, they would be higher than the 2022 figures.
Well, Zikumbarero is definitely a blessing to the nation. One more question on the goats. Price, if you look 5 years ago per kg, today you said $5. In 5 years' time, where's the price gone from and where will it go to?
Well, the price can still be at that level. You know why? Because there's a demand for exports. We have had too many inquiries of people. And I have people that come to me saying, we want to export goats. And I always say to them, you know what, the market is not ready for exporting because we just don't have the numbers. We simply don't have the numbers. Because the minimum that, say UAE or Saudi Arabia requires per consignment is per week. They were saying they want 35 to 40 tons per week. And that is translating to 2,000, 3,000 goats. And if we slaughter at that pace, we are not
depopulating.
Breeding. We basically in 2 years we'll have slaughtered everything we have. So we need to increase we need to increase what I call the production and productivity. Productivity is to do with, because a lot of the goats were dying. There was a high mortality ratio because people were not looking after the goats. They were not dipping them. They were not vaccinating them. So mortality rates were very high. So we have fought to reduce the mortality rates so that it was roughly at about 30 or so percent. And we need to move it down to about 15%, so that you find that the numbers will increase because the mortality ratio or the mortality numbers will have gone down. And then the breeding is going up, so we can increase the numbers. And once we increase our production, we can then look at exporting. Before that, we can't.
Well, it sounds like it's a no-brainer. Tremendous opportunity, goat farming in Zimbabwe. I think everyone that has the ability should get into it. Moving on to the future of Zimbabwe, I wanted to talk to you about the youth. And we're going to talk about your book in a moment. You know, it's important to recognize that today, 61% of Zimbabwe is under 25 years of age. And most of these people don't have a lot of hope. They don't have jobs. They don't know what's going to happen in the future. You're a woman who's won many local and international recognition and awards. Forbes Africa Businessman of the Year 2019, the EY World Entrepreneur Award of Southern Africa 2014, UNCTAD Unprotect Top 10 Global Women in Business. The list goes on and on. I can read it all day. But how do you take some of these entrepreneurial success stories of yours and be a light to shine to those there? And how does your book fit into this?
Well, for me, I think sharing my story like we're doing now, and I'm sure a lot of young people out there will be watching, is one way. I've always said our mission, you and I, Ken, and the rest of the other seasoned business leaders of our era, it's incumbent upon us to mentor and to ensure that we build the next generation of African business leaders. If we don't, then we are not going anywhere as a continent. So this is why I also wrote this book. I wrote this book because I want to share insights of what shaped me from being somebody who was working and then starting my own businesses that have done fairly well. And what are the things that I'm saying to these young people? These are the things that you should attend to. Everyone wants to go into business, but a lot of people have got a wrong way of looking at it. They want to sit in a corner office before they've really worked. They want to drive nice cars before they've really worked. They might not even have the financial discipline to understand that the business money is not their money yet. It is the money that belongs to. These are the insights that I've shared in this book, because I want to think the next generation of our African business leaders is going to be shaped by us, shaped by what we say, what we do, and what we share with them at this particular time in our lives.
So this book of entrepreneurial success, if you were to give me 3 nuggets, 3 takeaways of reasons why everyone should be reading it, what would they be?
Well, for me, it is number one, your mindset. That's what I start off with in this book.
By the way, I think the biggest problem we have in Zimbabwe is mindset.
Yeah, the mindset.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
people tend not to believe in themselves. They tend just to look at the negative things that are happening around. But they tend to forget that some of the negative things that they see around are some of the opportunities that they can leverage on. So it is the mindset that we need to change. We need to ensure that we cultivate a positive mindset. If you say, I can, there's always a saying that say you can. Yes, it's a difficult environment. A lot of people say, I can't have the capital. This book will tell you, it's not about the capital.
Absolutely.
I don't have the connection. It's not about the connections. I don't come from a rich family. It's not about your rich family. There are a lot of rich families, kids, that were left with a lot of wealth, but it is dissipated to zero. And yet there are some who grew from nothing from the ground and they've built a big business. So it is about the mindset. So that's one thing that I'll talk about. That of the 3 things that you want me to share on in this book.
Can you share the other 2?
Yes. I think it is about a value proposition. If there's anything that a business requires, is a product or a service that the market is in need of, and that is given at the right value, not in terms of money, because people are prepared to pay top dollar if they are happy with what you're providing. So for me, it is about understanding that the customer eventually is the one that makes you or breaks you. So it is value proposition. There's a whole chapter on value proposition, practically how we have also done it as a business. And the third thing is about the people. The people that you get into your business. And the people out there, of course, people is just not the people you work with, but the people out there in the community, people there that might be, stakeholders in different shapes and forms. So for me, particularly the people in the business are very key, because if you treat them well, they will treat your business well. If we are going to treat them badly, they will be the bad ambassadors of your business, and your business will not grow. So for me, it's the people, and we have ensured there is a survey done by IPC every year, but I think they stopped going into COVID. IPC. So they do this particular survey. They call it the best employer survey. We have always scored very well in terms of what they term people in the business understanding the strategic direction of a business. If people understand the strategic direction of, imagine we employ more than 4,000 people, but every year when that survey was being done, 82% of our people understood the strategic direction of the business.
Amazing.
Because we ensure that we give that sense of understanding and belonging to everyone in terms of where are we, why do we do certain things in certain ways? And why do we... So it is so important to give that understanding to your team members in terms of what are the values that we hold dear. And each and every one of them understands them. So for me, it's the people. And it is there. Those are the three things but there are more than, there are 12 things that are in this book.
So they'll have to read the book for the other 9.
Absolutely.
But Divine, I'm going to have to end it there. We could go on and on all night, but we've come to the end of the program. It's really been a privilege to hear from you tonight. And let me summarize that. This morning, I just gave a talk on strategy statements and how important they are in business. I actually said it's the roadmap to everything. It tells you where you're going, why you're going there, and how you're going to get there. And this is a woman who has 86% of her people knowing the strategy. Imagine if the country, 86% of Zimbabwe, knew the strategy of this country, where we'd be going. So hold on to those nuggets. Go and read the book. Thank you for watching tonight. Like, share, and pay it forward. Good evening. Thank you so much.
Faith, family, business, adventure. This is the Phoenix Podcast with Ken Sharpe.